Hey, what up guys? In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Spirit Haze build, or more specifically, my Hybrid Haze build, which kind of incorporated a lot of things from my Spirit Haze build and then made it into a more gun M1-y version of that. So if you want to find my build, you can go over to public and look up Renin, and in there you're going to find my Renin's Hybrid Haze build, which is what you see here. And I want to kind of quickly jump into it. Before I do, the kind of play style you're going to have when you play this build is very like hit and run and burst heavy. So you're going to try to go in, blow somebody up, and then get out before their team can kind of collapse on you, right? And I got to Eternus 4 using this build. I'm going to try to hit rank 1 on Haze and Eternus 6. Using this build specifically over the course of like a month or however long it takes me, I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know if I can hit rank 1 on Haze, but we'll see. I'm going to keep trying to push. But anyways, let's actually talk about the build, and then I'm going to go through each item and explain why I picked some of the controversial items on here, starting off with Infuser. So in general, I don't think you see a lot of people starting with Infuser, but it does a lot of really great things for Haze. One, it gives you a ton of ammo. Not a ton, but 10% more ammo, which is what you need in the early game so that you can last hit without constantly having to reload. It gives you a little bit of Spirit Shield, which is really good into the Spirit heavy lanes, which we're kind of in a meta where Spirit damage is kind of the thing everybody goes to. And then the active allows you to kind of use it when you need to burst something down, whether that's using it with Cold Front to try to help clear farm, or using it in your burst combo when you're going to dagger, Cold Front, Silence Glyph, and all that good stuff. So Infuser is really good, and I kind of use it for quite a while. It's a very good item, especially when you do this hybrid style of play. Then I go extra regen. The reason we go extra regen is because Haze in the early game is really not that good, and after the extra stamina nerf where they took away the fire rate, there's really not a whole lot of good options in the green slot. And having extra regen, one, allows you to heal up in lane a little bit more consistently and have a little bit of extra ammo to, like I said, either fight people or to push the minion wave out without having to constantly reload. Then we have rapid round, headshot booster. Pretty standard, very good items. And headshot booster before rapid round, because of extra 40 damage to the head in the very early stages of the game, could be like 8% of somebody's max HP, because 40 damage doesn't sound like a lot, but in the early game it is. Extra health, because as Haze you don't really need anything that scales with base HP. What you really want is bonus health, because you have one of the, or maybe the lowest base HPs in the entire game. So having any type of bonus HP allows you to get a lot more value than anything that scales with base HP. And if you look on the top right of the item, it says plus 11% base health. That doesn't really matter. We just want really bonus health in general. And then we go Cold Front. Now, you can kind of flip and flop between going Swift Striker first or Cold Front. It kind of depends. Like if I have a very passive laner that I'm fighting for whatever reason, like they're not really trying to fight me, I'll rush Cold Front. But honestly, I'm thinking about maybe switching these, always going Swift Striker first and then going Cold Front, no matter what, because I kind of feel like without Swift Striker, Cold Front doesn't really speed up your jungle clear, because you need a little bit of fire rate to finish the mobs off anyway. So I think I'm going to switch these around with more experimentation and go Swift Striker first and then Cold Front. But either way, Swift Striker and Cold Front allow you to clear the jungle quickly. And one thing you're going to have to take note when you play Haze is that she's all about efficiency. So when you play her, you need to be pushing the minion wave, farming as much as you can, going into the jungle, using Cold Front and Swift Striker to blow up jungle camps and then get back to lane before you lost any minions. And in general, I would say that Haze is kind of one of those characters where in the early game, she's really bad. So if you can go even with your lane opponent, you're, in a good spot. And having Cold Front allows you to, either push the minion wave out or allow you to clear the jungle in order to stay ahead in souls and then push that lead later on. And then next we have the barriers, which you have combat barrier, which if you're fighting a gun heavy lane opponent, you can go combat barrier, or because we're going a hybrid build, that spear power from Enchanter's barrier is also good. And in general, I probably always go Enchanter's barrier, because everybody I'm fighting in this current meta is an is a spirit based character. So yeah, what you could imagine is, you know, if I'm fighting something like a Geist, a Pocket, Yamato, anything that's going to do a lot of spirit damage, I go in Enchanter's Barrier for the extra survivability, and that extra 20 spirit power is going to work well with my Sleep Dagger, which has a really good coefficient for spirit power, and it works with Cold Front and Silence Glyph. So having any type of spirit power with this build is actually quite good. Then you go Quicksilver Reload, pretty self-explanatory, but take note of that 15% fire rate bonus for the clip. That is really good with this build. Anything that gives like a fire rate proc is extremely nice. Lifesteal, all, you know, pretty standard. Then we have Bullet Resist Shredder, which I don't normally get until later because it kind of scales with your damage, right? So I kind of get it when, you know, I'm filling out the rest of my slots, and then I have, you know, I want to amplify my damage. I can go Bullet Resist Shredder. Really nice later on. Then you can get Silence Glyph. I don't normally get Silence Glyph until I've gotten Tesla Bullet. And as you can see here with Tesla Bullet, you can either rush it really early, like you can see in the annotation if you're fighting a very passive laner. I might get Swift Striker and like Enchanter's Barrier or something like that, or maybe even Quicksilver Reload in an ultra passive lane, and then just farm up for Tesla Bullet, because if I don't need like a barrier because my laner is not really fighting me, same thing with Bullet Lifesteal, if I don't need to sustain or to survive my lane opponent, I'll just rush Tesla Bullet. If you've ever played an RTS game, it's kind of like if your opponent is kind of AFK on their side of the map, you can like build an extra expansion, farm up a bunch of minerals and all that. That's kind of what it is like if you rush Tesla Bullet, where if your opponent isn't going to punish you for being greedy, then be greedy, because it'll allow you to get ahead quicker. And now getting Tesla Bullet earlier will allow you to clear the jungle way faster, especially when comboed with Quicksilver Reload, than, you know, buying all these extra items like, you know, Bullet Lifesteal, Enchanter's Barrier, because that'll set you down, you know, 2,500 extra souls that you could instead invest into Tesla Bullet a lot sooner. And then after you get Tesla, you want to pick one of these here. Don't really look at Curse. That is like a late game option. You want to either get Silence Glyph or Slowing Hex. And in general, I always get Silence Glyph because the meta right now is kind of like, sure, there's some characters like Abram, Infernus, Holiday maybe not even Holiday because she has her lasso, but like there's a lot of characters who don't have any like burst crowd control on you, and if you Slowing Hex at them, you can really punish them and they can't counterplay it. And then you can do a combo where if you have silent or Slowing Hex, I'll show it here. If you like sleep, Slowing Hex ult, if it's like Infernus, if he doesn't have like Metal Skin, he'll just die, right? Same with Abram. If they don't have Metal Skin or Warp Stone or any of these other options, then they'll just die. However, same with Shiv. Shiv is another good character to buy Slowing Hex into. But in general, I like going Silence Glyph, right? Because a lot of the heroes right now have a lot of abilities that counteract. Like I'll see a lot of Dynamo, a lot of Mo and Krill, a lot of Wraith, a lot of Geist who can swap, Yamato, stuff like that, where even if I apply Slowing Hex to you, sure you can't run, but you have like an ultimate that counters me. So if I try to do that combo again, you know, if I try to like, imagine that Silence was a Slowing Hex and I try to ult, a Wraith will counter ult me and then it'll stun me. Or a Geist will wait till she gets low and then swap me and then kill me. Or Yamato will pop ult, you know, when I try to ult. But if you get Silence Glyph, not only does it scale with your spear power in terms of damage, but it'll also obviously silence the enemy, and then they can't pop their ultimate, like a Wraith can't TP, she can't ult, Yamato can't ult, all this good stuff, and then that ult combo will just kill them. Especially when you combo it with Cold Front, that applies a 40% movement slow. Not only are you getting kind of that slow from the Slowing Hex type of thing, but you're also getting the silence on top of it. And because if you combo, you know, Silence Glyph and Cold Front, there's pretty, like, not a lot of ways people can get out of it unless they have like Metal Skin or Warp Stone or something like that. So in general, I like getting Silence Glyph. The damage is really good as well. And then we start going into the other options where we get Burst Fire for that better M1 damage. We get Heroic Aura for the active and the utility of it. I mean, it gives bonus HP, which I talked about is really good. Lifesteal, really good. Movement speed, amazing for those quick rotates and speed farming. And then you have the active, which gives you a burst of fire rate. And now I want to talk about Heroic Aura and Surge of Power right now because of the procs. And like I mentioned earlier, I said that 15% fire rate bonus from Quicksilver Reload is really good. Well, you get that same thing from Surge of Power, and you also get 34 spirit damage or ability power to your dagger, which is an effective, like, what is that, like 90 damage to your dagger, which is really good in the mid game. And you get bonus HP on top of it. And that bonus movement speed is also really good because when you do the combo, and I'll show it here in a second, when you do the combo, you're going to get movement speed, which allows you to slide without needing to like use stamina to do it. So what the combo is going to look like with this build, right? With all these fire rate procs and the active of, you know, burst fire and heroic aura, quicksilver reload, surge of power, all these fire rates, right? You're going to come out, pop heroic aura, cold front, silence glyph, go for all headshots. So let me do that again. Boom. Go for all headshots. And then if you hold, if you strafe in one direction, you can end up sliding without needing to dodge roll because you have so much movement speed. And that's kind of what you want to do because in the early game, you don't have a lot of ammo and you have so much fire rate, you're going to deplete your magazine immediately. So you really need to be sliding with this build. So let me do that again. You want to be sliding around like that. And then that way you don't run out of ammo and you can just kind of burst people down with all that extra fire rate that you have without needing to reload. And that's kind of the build, right? Or in the early to mid game, if you get silence glyph, you could do the same thing, except you pop ult instead. And ult is kind of like a checkmate ability. I'd always use ult, but if it's on cooldown and I go to gank somebody, or maybe I'm ganking somebody with a teammate nearby and I can't use ult, then you can use your M1. But in general, yeah, that's kind of how you play Haze in the mid game. And then once you start getting things like crippling headshot, spiritual overflow, then you can start just annihilating people in openers like completely, and they just flop over, you know, with all the burst damage. You can see here I did 1600 spirit damage. Keeps bugging out. And then you also do a bunch of gun damage as well. You know, see that? Like your burst window does an enormous amount of damage when you get items, and there's not really much counterplay to it unless you eventually get like I said, metal skin and all that. And if people start getting things like metal skin and bullet armor or warp stone, anything that can kind of counter your combo in some particular way, you can end up getting curse and then get rid of silence glyph because you won't have a lot of active slots. You can get curse and then they can't pop anything, they just die. They can't shoot you, they can't pop an item, they can't use an ability, and you can try to kill them in the opener as well as kind of like a late game cheese option. And then to round out the build, we get superior cooldown because one, it busts up your Tesla bullet because it'll lower the cooldown on the proc chance, which is good. It has like an extra 20 DPS, which is kind of small, but I mean, an extra 20 damage is pretty good, or damage per second. And then you also get extra ammo, which is really good with the builds, spirit shield, all that good stuff. And you lower the cooldown on your dagger, and it lines up really well to like an 8-second cooldown, and Surge of Power has like a 7-second cooldown. So the cooldown of your dagger and Surge of Power line up quite well with this as well. And you're going to have it more often to be able to burst people in the middle of a team fight more, you know, more effectively. And it also lowers the cooldown of all your active abilities. And as you can see here, we have a lot of actives. So, you know, lowering the cooldown on all of those is really, really nice as well. And then to round it all off, we get Fortitude, which is, you know, bonus health, which, like I mentioned earlier, you want bonus health on Haze. It's really good to improve our survivability. Fortitude also in the late game regenerates your HP when out of combat. And because you can stay in stealth pretty much permanently with the Spirit Power build or the hybrid build I have, you can basically sit in stealth, tell your team, hey, I'm going to regenerate my HP, and then I'll re-enter the fight in a late game. So like if you're sieging and you need to go back, instead of having to go all the way back down to your base to heal, then all the way back, you can just AFK for a second, heal up to full, and then help your team immediately without having to go back. And then whenever you're, you know, 75% HP or more, which happens a lot because whenever you gank people, you're going to have full HP, meaning you're going to get the passive bonus from this, meaning you're going to have 27% extra weapon damage, which honestly is okay on Haze. Not amazing, not bad. 27% weapon damage is really good. But the one thing I want to call out to is the movement speed. And like I said earlier, the more movement speed you have, whenever you engage on somebody, you can basically be sliding around them and get infinite ammo without needing to slide, as you can see here. So that extra, movement speed from Fortitude also allows you to rotate quicker and get that movement speed whenever you gank somebody. That way you can slide and get infinite ammo. And then after that, we have a bunch of other options, but these are all situational. You can go unstoppable into very heavy crowd control based teams. You can go metal skin into heavy bullet damage teams. Ethereal shift is like an option if you're fighting like a Lash or something, and you need to be able to survive in the mid game to his ultimate. You can buy that. Spirit armor against spirit damage, debuff remover into like Wraith, Pocket, Eternus, any of these heroes that you need to remove their debuff. Bullet armor is like, I almost never buy bullet armor, but it is an option if you're fighting like 4 bullet carries, which does occasionally happen, not very often in this meta, but it does happen. You can buy that. Debuff reducer, if you're building into debuff remover. I almost never buy inhibitor, but it's there as well. Reactive barrier is actually really good if you're fighting a lane opponent, and this is like an early game option. But if you're fighting like a lane opponent like Bebop, Abram, Wraith, or something like that, where they're going to apply crowd control, that extra 550 effective health is really, really good in the early game. That's like doubling your effective HP. Excuse me. Toxic bullet I only buy if there's like heavy healing, like a Geist, Infernus, Shiv, Abram, any of these like characters that heal a lot is a really good item into them. Escalating resilience is like my favorite go-to item if I'm fighting bullet damage. Really good item, all around awesome. Healbane is another good item if your lane opponent is, a Geist or Abram, something where like, oh, you want to have healing reduction right now in the early game, you can buy Healbane. It's really nice as well. Headhunter is something I'm experimenting with because, like I said, it gives you 2 movement speed whenever you headshot, which in the opener, after sleep daggering, you get that movement speed bonus. 130 extra headshot damage is really nice in the early game. So I'm kind of experimenting with it. You don't have to go Headhunter, but I am trying to see if I can make it work. It is a pretty fun item. Not that good, but it is pretty fun. You don't have to buy this item. It's situational. Same with Decay. Decay is kind of another option where not really the best, but it is another healing reduction if there's like an insane amount of healing on the enemy team. Superior duration is actually an interesting one, and I want to talk about it for a second. So you can actually run this over superior cooldown because when you buy it and you put on your dagger, it increases the duration of the wake up time. So before, if I don't have the item, you can see on the middle right, my wake up time is 0.38. And then when I buy the item, the wake up time is 0.56, which basically means that it takes them half a second now before they can act after getting hit. So when I sleep dagger you and I shoot you in the head, there's half a second right there while I'm shooting you and with all headshots where you can't move, which is really, really nice because the longer they can't move, the more headshots and fixation you can get up and damage you can do. So like you can get like, damn near 80 stacks of fixation before they can even play the game, which means basically that after they wake up, they're going to die because, you're fully maxed out on fixation. You have a ton of fire rate. You're going to blow them up, especially in the late game. So it's up to you. You can either get superior duration or superior cooldown. It's really up to you. Withering Whip is another option if you're fighting a very fire rate focused team like an Infernus, Wraith, McGinnis, Ivy, any characters that build gun damage. Withering Whip is a good option. And Boundless Spirit is kind of like an ultra late game option if you want to add extra burst to your damage window, to your knife, cold front, silence, and all that. I would never buy this outside of like the ultra late game if I'm super fed, but other than that, it's like a niche option. And then you have Majestic Leap, where Majestic Leap actually doesn't get you out of stealth. So there are a couple ways you can use it, right, with this type of build. Because we're kind of like an assassin in terms of like how we play, you can Majestic Leap while stealth, get to somebody in the backline, blow them up, do damage, kill like a Vindicta, a Wraith, a Grey Talon, something like that. And then you can try to get away after. Or you can use your Majestic Leap as a way to, stealth up to somebody. This is how I kind of like using it. You stealth up to them, blow them up, do all that damage, and then Majestic Leap out before the enemy team can like kind of get to their teammate and keep them alive. But yeah, that's kind of how I do it. And I do want to actually, I forgot to mention between Superior Stamina and Spiritual Overflow, these kind of help you a lot. One, if you have really good movement, I love Superior Stamina because it allows you to chase or get away from people. It gives you bonus health, which is really nice as well. And it gives you fire rate. We love that. And Spirit Power, again, with a hybrid build, we love Spirit Power as well. So it gives it basically every stat we want in terms of playing Haze. So damage, mobility, and health. Boom. Perfect item. That's why we get it so early. And then we get spiritual overflow. You can either go crippling headshot or spiritual overflow. It just depends on what you're fighting. Like if you're fighting a very tanky team, like if they have an Abram, a Viscus, a Kelvin, Calico, who knows what you're fighting, then you might want to go crippling headshot because it'll have the most damage impact rather than going for spiritual overflow, because if they have a lot of armor and spirit resist, then you need crippling headshot. But if they're squishy, like they have a great talent, Vindicta, Wraith, all these heroes that are pretty squishy, a Holiday, then you can go with spiritual overflow and then it'll boost up your damage more. Now with spiritual overflow though, the one thing you want to keep in mind is that you won't really be able to get the proc of the passive where you glow purple and you get the 35% fire rate and the spirit power in the opener, as you can see here, right? Like you don't get it. Like you kind of get the buff after you've already been shooting the person. So it's kind of a thing where like if you're in a team fight, you want to get the buff up on somebody and then look to assassinate somebody in the back, like, you know, in the back line, or punish the tank in the front line. And then you want to kind of save your combo for when you have this passive up, because then you're going to have 50, you know, extra spirit power for your knife, your cold front, and your silence glyph. And you're also going to have the fire rate to burst somebody down when they're slept. So you kind of want to make sure you have the buff up before you engage, but you don't need to wait. Like if there's somebody completely on their side of the map, or they're like off on their own, you want to kill them, you don't need to go like farm up the buff and then try to go assassinate somebody. You can just kind of assassinate them in general without the buff active, because you'll activate it after they wake up from the dagger anyway. But just, I'd want to keep that in mind. Like you do want to try to engage when you have the, you know, or the passive active. I really like this build because it incorporates a very assassin-y type of playstyle where you try to catch people off guard, blow them up, and then get out quickly, while also having kind of that sustained damage from your M1 to also be able to help in a team fight and do really good sustained damage. That's personally why I like it. It's a little bit more versatile than a normal gun build, and it also helps your ultimate out as well. So if they buy metal skin, you can always have a better ultimate to kind of blow somebody up through metal skin if you actually have to, which you kind of can do with a gun build, but it's a little bit better with this build. So in general, I like this build the most, I think, out of every build, but let me know what you guys think down below. Anyways, guys, leave a like and subscribe also if you enjoyed the video, but that'll be it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm out.